So Derek Barnett, formerly of the Eagles, came in, had 2 sacks. Christian Harris had a sack. He also had a pick 6. Will Anderson Jr., the 3rd overall pick, had a sack. And they were heating up Joe Flacco. And look, in the Browns' defense, and this is, again, is not taking anything away from the Texans' accomplished, but it's just in terms of how this game got to where it was. They were on offensive tackles 4 and 5 at that point. Hudson left for a little bit. His replacement came in, and you might as well put John Breach out there on his birthday because that's what it looked like. And they were getting absolutely destroyed. By the way,
Derek Stingley did an awesome job on Amari Cooper whole game, basically.
So Houston had 4 sacks. Mentioned Harris, mentioned Jr. and Barnett. They also hit Flacco on the pick 6 that he threw. They had 6 quarterback hits, 11 tackles for loss. In terms of the offense, Houston had 4 plays offensively that went for over 25 yards. 3 of them directly resulted in ending up in the end zone. The other was that 27-yard pass to Mechie down the right sideline that set up Houston's first touchdown to Nico. And Cleveland, their defense came into this wildcard game. It's a top 10 team in the fewest pass plays of 20-plus yards allowed. So that also was one of the turning points in the game. There were like 5 or 6 of them. It was not everything that could go wrong for the Browns did go wrong, except Breach didn't come down to Dustin Hopkins not being able to play. It didn't unless he's going to kick 47 field goals at the end of that game. Riley Patterson, it didn't matter. So I don't know. This is a complete and utter whooping, and this is all about the Houston Texans doing everything right and overwhelming a really good Browns defense and a great story with Flacco and the Browns offensively. And there's no excuses being made. This is just the reality of where these two teams are. And I think to Brinson's point, we talk about, or at least Brinson jokes about David Tepper watching this game. I would imagine Shad Khan is watching this game and going, okay, wait a second. Why aren't we doing these same sort of things?
Yeah, and I think one thing to even more to the Texans' credit is you look at the Browns, and they had a couple ugly losses this season. They lost the Ravens 28-3. They got smoked by the Broncos. I think they lost by 17. They lost to the Rams like 36-20. And so there were some bad losses, but this was the worst loss. I mean, this game, sure, it was neck and neck for a good chunk of the first half. We'll say the whole first half, I guess, but it felt like when the Texans scored past the 2-minute warning with under 2 minutes left, I think there was like a minute left, the Dalton Schultz touchdown, it was over. There was at no point, once it was 24-14, that's when the game fell over. Because Ryan, you were asking, when did I feel like the Browns were in it? That is when it was like, I can stop watching this game and go enjoy my birthday because the Browns are not coming back from this because their defense can't do anything. You just kept thinking Jim Schwartz has been so smart all year that there'd be some sort of adjustment. They would change something. And it was almost like they underestimated CJ Stroud in the sense that, like, yeah, he did that against other teams, but he's not going to do that against our defense that was the best in the NFL this year at stopping the pass. And we don't care that Denzel Ward got banged up. We're going to do what the Browns do, and we're going to win that way. And it just wasn't happening. And that was that. I mean, and then obviously the pick 6 on Cleveland's first possession of the second half is when it was officially over. But 24-14.
By the way,
24-14 felt like it was done.
Just because I brought it up and I didn't have the list right in front of me, but I wanted to revisit it very quickly. Here are the players that the Texans got in the Deshaun Watson trade via the draft picks. Kenyon Green, John Mechie, Christian Harris, pick 6, Damian Pierce, Thomas Booker, Will Anderson, Tank Dell, Brandon Hill, Xavier Hutchinson. Oh, and by the way, the Texans are getting a first-round pick from the Browns as well this year, and a third-round pick. I saw somebody tweet this out from Cleveland. It was like, they just kicked our ass, and we have to give them our first-round pick. Like, that's a tough scene. I think what's interesting about the Cleveland thing is coming into this game, I was really confident in the Browns. Like, I was confident the Browns are going to win the game. I just felt like rookie quarterback, lack of experience. Joe Flacco would play. Yeah, I mean, I figured he might throw some picks, but wasn't really worried about it. Figured he would sling the ball around and play well. And it really came crashing down fast, didn't it? It did not feel like Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco got old fast. It felt like Joe Flacco was old out there. Now you're dealing with
aged 12 years at halftime. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a ton of offensive line injuries. Let me ask you. We talk about this all the time. Do the Browns have a successful season?
Yes. Oh my God, by a million miles.
I do think. I mean, if Brinson, I do think they did just because of all the injuries and you're on your fourth starting quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just asking the question.
Well, I think that it's certainly debatable, though. I think that if you ask fans in Cleveland, they might have felt like we played a rookie quarterback. We got the opponent we wanted, the AFC South winner.
Right.
And Cleveland fans are probably writing hate letters to Mike Vrabel. Couldn't you have just laid over and let Jacksonville win so we could have played the Jags in the wild card round? You got fired, man. Just
Breach,
go
there's
out on a
no
low.
Browns fan that doesn't think this season is successful given the way that it started.
I feel like, I agree with you, Wilson.
I feel like this. I mean, the season ends for 31 teams in disappointment. It always does. But I feel like Browns fans had sort of gotten themselves to a place where it wasn't. God, Peacock is loud. They had gotten themselves to a place where they were no longer felt like they were playing with house money. They should have been. Like they were playing with house money for so long. And then they get the 5 seed and they're like, all right, we get a rookie quarterback, as Breach points out, on the road, but defense that we think we can throw against. Joe Flacco's playing well. They're favored. Like in their mind, they're going to play Baltimore next week. In Baltimore, a division opponent they feel like they can beat. And like I don't know. I don't get me wrong. The season was way more successful than it should have been given the circumstances. That's what I tried to point out to the people in Cleveland on 92.3 The Fan with our buddy King Carmen and Anthony Lima was that, look, you got here, you won more games than you should have, but don't for a second believe that this is the pathway. Like that you were never, this is, if I told you the things that were going to happen throughout the season, you would never predict 5th seed and like 11 wins. Now, so in that sense, it's a good season, but it's also, I think they got themselves to a place that they believe that this might be a magical run for Cleveland in the playoffs. And that was a beatdown.
Brinson, are you talking about Browns fans or are you talking about you when you said they got to a place where they thought the Browns could make a magical run in the playoffs?
I mean, maybe I helped to get Browns fans there. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like you're projecting. If they'd lost this game 24-21, everyone's celebrating. I mean, they just got their asses kicked, and that's just the reality of it. That's the last taste you have in your mouth. You got to own it and move on. You have to be excited about the defense. We'll see what happens with Jim Schwartz, whether he gets a head coaching job.
I mean, are you excited about the defense? He just gave up 34 points to a rookie quarterback in his first playoff.
We were excited about the defense for 99.9% of the season.
Well, 50% of the season, because when they weren't at home, they were bad.
And they got stomped by a really good offense, a really good offensive coordinator. And again, I think one of the underlying points that needs to be reiterated and can't be stressed enough is that if you get the offensive coordinator right and you have the quarterback that can help you do that, Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers, then you can do really good things. And that's to take nothing away from CJ Stroud, who has been absolutely and utterly special. In fact, I think I asked you last time, Breach, if he's a top 7 quarterback, and you agreed that he is. He might be actually higher than that, given the way he played. And one last thing I'll mention about the Texans.
I got a hot take, too, before we move on to the next game.
Yeah, I got a couple things.
Yeah, we got a second. I was just going to say that the Houston Texans, over the course of the season offensively, their success rate was about 47%. They were successful offensively on 54.5% of their plays. For some perspective, and just a preview for the game to come, sorry, producer Harry, the Dolphins on Saturday night were successful on a quarter of their plays. What were you going to say, Breach?
I mean, real quick, we talked about how the Texans,
do you want to take a break and then come back with the hot take and the things?
No, well, this isn't a hot take. I was just going to say that we talked about how the Texans are built for the future, and obviously the Deshaun Watson trade. You feel very good about winning this division for the long run over the next 5-7 years with what you have in Houston right now. But if you're Cleveland, look, I know you're dealing with all these injuries, but you are in the most difficult division in football where everyone just finished with a winning record. There's no guarantee you're going to finish ahead of the Ravens or the Bengals or the Steelers next year. So you're almost back at square one. It's not easy to get to the playoffs in the AFC North. So I think that if you're, and that's the sense, maybe that's why you're kind of depressed going into the offseason if you're Cleveland, because you're thinking Deshaun Watson still hasn't proved anything, and we are no lock to get back to the playoffs. And that's where you are, even if you're fully healthy.
You have to play Deshaun Watson and keep him through the duration of his contract. Jim Schwartz has, I think, and this is anecdotal and just sort of off the top of my head, but I feel like Jim Schwartz defensively can usually have a big impact early on, but because of the aggressiveness, like sometimes it'll trail off if you don't, like they need to improve the personnel. The offensive line's pretty old. Nick Chubb's coming back from a debilitating injury.
Their offensive line's in pretty good shape when they're healthy. They're just injured.
Yeah,
poor guys.
But I mean, they're just getting a little bit older. They have to replenish it probably. Deshaun Watson, we're still like, We don't know if he's a guy. I don't. If you're Cleveland, I feel like you have more questions than answers for the long haul.
I'm laughing at you because before we take a break, Breach, can you refresh my memory as to what Brinson was saying 2 hours ago about the Browns?
They're the best team in the history of football, and they're never going to lose another game until 2032.